Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to the energy report for the week of Friday, July 29th to Thursday, August 4th. Okay, well, we're continuing on with a similar theme to last week. It feels very energetically like just a continuation. Although this week it's less intense, but it kind of we'll see what comes up next week. But I kind of feel like we just passed through a gateway last week of that is setting the stage for the rest of the year. And I'll go into this in greater, more elaborate detail for the monthly energy report for the entire month of August, which will be published on YouTube and shared in the Patreon on August 1st in a couple days. But intuitively, I have been feeling like earlier in the spring, as this year started to march forward, I was really getting a feeling that the second half of the year was going to feel like more of a squeeze, a little bit darker, a little bit higher or harder, sorry. And that everything is fine. But I'll always bring it back to the analogy of birth. Like you simply cannot give birth to something new without the contractions. So it feels like we are entering into more of a contraction phase of this year. And I really deeply feel that we as light workers and shadow workers, way showers, truthers, healers, readers, channels, oracles, mimetic wizards, whatever it is that we do, however it is that we show up, galactics, angelics, archetypal beings, we are being summoned. It's always the message that comes through me, but it feels so important. And I so deeply hope that you hear me. We are being summoned. It is time. We like, this is what we came for. We have to do this. Okay. So, so that you can understand what I'm talking about. The cards that I pulled for this week are the Five of Cups, the Hanged Man, and the Four of Pentacles. Now, the Five of Cups, the cups is the suit of the emotional realm and of the psychic realm. It's of like dreams, emotions, psychic experiences, and the way that they affect our emotional body. And the Five of Cups traditionally, or to me anyway, kind of always speaks about grief, but it isn't a present grief. That tends to be more a message of the Eight of Cups, but it is like a past grief, past pain, something that happened that is unresolved from either our incarnation that we would consider to be our current incarnation or past lives, but it's something in our Akashic field that still carries a charge of pain around it and a sense of loss, a sense of sadness. So in the picture, the woman is looking towards four cups that are upright and are full, and the fifth one is knocked over. And I know that often the guidance that comes through around the Five of Cups is to remind us to look at what we have and not focus on the past, but look at what we have in the present. Look at those four cups that are full and not focus our attention on the one that is toppled over. But for me, in the context of the energy of this week and the cards that came through last week and what I am feeling for the rest of the year, is that we're shifting into the dark period of the year already. I mean, as we know, right? Because if we're in the Northern Hemisphere, we know that as of June 21st, like June 20th, 21st is the longest day of the year. And now the dark is gaining. So every day the day gets shorter and the night gets longer. But typically I don't tend to really start feeling this really, really, really energetically until about October, November, like around Halloween, That's sort of usually when that energy we really feel that energy shift. But I'm feeling it now. I do feel as though the remainder of the year is gonna be let me put it this way, a lot of things are going to be healed, and in order for them to be healed, they are first going to be triggered. And believe that we are all very safe and we are all very protected, particularly the people in my audience who are drawn to listen to these messages from me. So, that is, of course, not to say I can never offer a guarantee either to myself or anyone else that air quotes bad things won't happen, meaning we will not experience intensity of our own or loss of our own, like those, we are not immune to those things. And yet, I feel a distinction, an ever increasing distinction that who I'm actually speaking to is the group of people, the group of incarnates who are here to guide the passage of consciousness from a place of being stuck asleep within the dream to a place of being awake within the dream. And then when we are truly awake within the dream, the great dreaming mind itself awakens, and we all graduate from this collective dream experience that we have been living through for, well, we can't even describe it in terms of time, but countless life simulations. And as part of the process of waking up, there are many things that need to be seen. They simply must be seen and accounted for. We can't wake up and leave things in our past unresolved. It's like when we do that, we leave pieces of ourselves in the past, and those pieces of ourselves are ourselves. So we can never truly leave them or forget them, and they will haunt us. So the guidance that comes through to me in the context of all this is that actually what we need to do now, this week and moving onward, is to look at that one cup that is toppled over. To, yes, totally acknowledge with gratitude and appreciation and presence and love the four cups that are still upright and are full. It does not have to be one or the other. It is both and. Yes, I have all these things and I have lost this. And I kind of honestly I'm a little bit self-conscious about constantly referring to Killian because, he's my baby and I don't ever want it to seem like I'm heavily relying on him in a way that he kind of like uses his story for my benefit. But it is the lens through which I have come to understand these like wise bits of guidance that channeled through me. They were lifesavers to me at that time. And before I experienced the hard things that I experienced, they I was able to understand them at a cognitive level, at a conceptual level. But until I lived through those trials and tribulations and immense pains of my own, I couldn't truly understand them at a cellular, DNA, atomic, subatomic level, as I believe that I do now. And so I can look at the children that I have alive, the beautiful, healthy, living 3 children that I have. And I can look at my partner and our home and the life that I have created, and I can be in profound gratitude for all of this. And I can feel the loss of Killian. I can feel the absence of him in my life. And I believe that because I'm willing to do that, I'm not being haunted by it. it's resolved in me. And I don't ever want to give anybody the impression that I'm so like super wise myself that like I just immediately knew how to navigate grief when he died, because I did not. The truth is that I wanted to get pregnant again right away because I was so afraid of the pain. I was so afraid. And, my hormones were all confused. My body was all confused. My heart was absolutely broken. My ego was shattered. And it was so scary and so overwhelming. And I had no idea how to cope with it at all. And so, what I wanted was to immediately get pregnant so that I would not have to feel all of that. And it was the wisdom of my partner. He just would not, he wouldn't do it. And because, he wasn't withholding it for my sake, he was withholding it for his own sake, but he also knew where I was coming from. And he knew that I needed to be present with this and process it in order for it to truly be metabolized into my consciousness so that I could, truly move forward. And I'm so glad that he had that lucidity and that wisdom, and that he lovingly kind of refused to cave to my desperation and my fear. And so because because he would not concede to my desire to immediately get pregnant right away, I felt that I had no choice but to be so completely present with my grief. And I was present with my grief, and I still am present with my grief. And therefore, I can live this life that I am so in such deep, awe-filled gratitude of, and also be in deep presence with what I have experienced as a loss, and allow those both to occupy my space at the same time. And so, on one hand, there's going to be a personal aspect to all of this, of course, because as I just shared, like being being a light worker does not preclude us from experiencing loss and pain and grief, either in our present, our future, or our past. So it could be that for some of you hearing this message, this is a personal piece of guidance for yourself, that there is something that, didn't go as your conscious mind would have wanted it to go, that created a sense of grief, sadness, loss, devastation. Maybe it was like your hopes were raised and then they were, maybe it's you thought that you were going to get married to somebody and then they called it off. Or maybe you thought you were going to get a promotion and the promotion was given to somebody else. Maybe it's something that feels like huge, similar to losing weight. Maybe you got pregnant, and maybe you tried so many rounds of IVF and you finally got pregnant. And then when you went for your 12-week scan, you learned that you had miscarried 2 weeks prior and you didn't know. Like shit like that happens. And it is so painful. It's so incredibly painful. Whether it's a big, huge thing in your life or it's a small thing, it doesn't matter. If it is affecting you, you have to acknowledge it. And that doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you human. And you can also have a fucking amazing life or a lot to be thankful for. So maybe this guidance is personal for you, but I feel like for a lot of us, it's actually the guidance that we need to remember as we hold sacred space for others. I believe that right now, what is really being called of us, and I will elaborate on this with the card for the month in August, in the August 1st reading. But I believe that what is being called of us is to hold sacred space for others and really witness them as they struggle. And when I say others, I mean those who are not awakened yet, be they unawakened starseeds, indigos, crystals, rainbows, whatever, or be they kind of like humans that don't have that aspect to them. It doesn't matter. We're all in this together. We're all characters in the same, holographic dream projection. And in order for us to actually, as I said, wake up out of this dream, which is happening anyway, whether our individual ego psyche wants it to or not, the part of the process is seeing every piece that has been, like unconscious to us. And I believe that means a lot of grief is going to be triggered, a lot of pain is going to be triggered, and may or may not come in the form of death and people actually dying. Grief comes, grief is triggered through many forms of loss. Death is like the death of a human or a pet or a loved one is not the only form of loss that we're talking about here. And so it is for us to hold this sacred space, I believe, to witness people as they process. For some of us, it is to facilitate the seeing. For those of us who feel like we are meant to be healers on whatever level, whether it's within the system, outside of the system, what it looks like for me is seeing the pieces that have previously been unseen, that allows the whole story to be understood through my private work in, a small number of Akashic readings and mentorship, and then in my personal relationships out in the world. For you, it might look differently, but I really, that is the guidance that comes through for this card. We have to see that cup that is toppled over. We have to. It's real. It affects us. This is the last weekly energy report to come out on the podcast. Henceforth, they will live on Patreon at the $5 a month tier, the lowest tier. If you love these energy reports, you can find them there. The monthly ones will still be going out for free on YouTube. It is our executive decision to have revived the Patreon. Its time has finally come, and I am so excited. There are multiple tiers at which you can access the Patreon. If you love my podcast, it would mean so much to me if you become a Patreon member. I love this podcast. I want to leave it clean and clear. I want it to be something that you could just come in and listen to, and you don't have to skip through any part of it, except maybe my rambles at the beginning or end. But it means a lot to me to offer this as an act of love and service to everyone who's drawn to explore the topic of spiritual awakening. So if you love what I do and you're just like, Amy, I love you, then please come join the Patreon. My weekly energy reports are now going to go behind the $5 a month tier, as well as channeled messages / rituals or rituals for the new moons and full moons are going to be behind the $5 Patreon tier, plus surprise bonus podcast episodes. So it would mean a lot to me. There are higher tiers if you're into other things. They have like dope offerings behind them. If you liked my last 2 podcast episodes, which I feel like a lot of people did because a lot of people have reached out to tell me about it, then you might want to join Patreon, because those are the kind of thoughts that I have. Those are the kind of transmissions I get, and that's where they're going to live from now on. Okay, my beautiful friends, thank you so much for listening. I love you so much, and I will catch you on Tuesday on the next episode.